One option that's clearly available to consumers today is delivery. Delivery with all its uncertainties.
Good defense!
We could spend hours debating the merits of those fragile stickers, but another option that is available is, of course, click and collect. That's what I'll be talking about today, together with my colleague Shanika. You probably know me best for the brands rather than the company name. Pepkor owns Best & Less, Harris Scarfe and Postie over in New Zealand. We're a value retailer. Ironically, and I'll confess from the outset, we don't offer click and collect. So it made it a somewhat strange topic, but it's not a topic that we ignore. We constantly reevaluate whether click and collect belongs in our businesses. It just hasn't yet reached the top of the list that we are actually putting our focus to. Best & Less has a bit of a toe in the water. It offers a special customer order service in-store, so you as a customer can go up to a team member, place an order for something that might be out of size, that might be out of the range of that store. AFL and NRL tops are a classic for that. And that will come from our central fulfilment centre back to the store for in-store collection. So it's a toe in the water, but it's not a traditional click and collect model. What I will focus on today is the fundamentals of click and collect. Shanika will take us on more of a journey of global trends and growth and endless innovation. This is certainly a market which is not standing still, and the opportunities to plug into new and exciting things is very much there. Before we start though, I wouldn't mind winding back the clock to about 1995. To listen to Steve Jobs, to hear what he had to say as a visionary 2 years before he went back to Apple and 2 years before he started transforming our world.
That the web is going to be profound in what it does to our society. As you know, about 15% of the goods and services in the US are sold via catalogs or over the television. All that's going to go on the web and more. Billions and billions, soon tens of billions of dollars worth of goods and services are going to be sold on the web. If you could, a way to think about it is the ultimate direct-to-customer distribution channel. Another way to think about it is the smallest company in the world can look as large as the largest company in the world on the web. So I guess I think the web, as we look back 10 years from now, the web is going to be the defining technology, the defining social moment for computing. And I think it's going to be huge. I think it's breathed a whole new generation of life into personal computing, and I think it's going to be huge.
I think Steve got it pretty much right, but there's one thing that I would debate, and that's the ability for the smallest company to look like the biggest company. And especially if you want to have an amazing online presence, it takes a lot of money to invest. And I think the idealism that was perhaps held in 1995 hasn't quite played out. But regardless of how you look at it, and no matter what chart you look at, online is growing. It might be 5% of business, it might be 10% of business, I hear 50% of business, but it's growing, and it's not going to get any smaller, and it's not going to go away. And the other reality is that click and collect is a fundamental and growing part of that. At the beginning, it was such a simple premise. Customer goes online, they click on something they want to buy, they choose where they want to collect it, they don't pay for delivery. They go to the store, it's there, and if the retailer's lucky, they'll buy something else. So it's a bit of a win-win. That simple premise seems to be morphing though. So not only do we have these store pickups, we also now have partner store pickups, which if they're part of the same business group, works. But you have locker collection points coming in, drive-throughs, third-party collection points, and I'm even seeing businesses start to charge for click and collect services now. All these things are sort of blurring the lines between what I would call click and collect and delivery, but it's all about collection. Coles has an offer where you don't even have to go into the store to collect your goods.
Looking for a quicker way to do your grocery shop? Try Coles Click and Collect and let us do the shopping for you. Simply order online, choose a collection time that suits you, and our personal shoppers will hand pick and pack your groceries. Collection is free, and you can even collect the same day. With so many collection locations, pickup is easy. Collect from Coles supermarkets and we'll deliver to your car boot, or from our easy-to-use refrigerated lockers at Coles Express. Coles Click and Collect, ready when you are.
So you go to the supermarket, you almost get there, but the goods are brought to your boot, or you collect it from a locker. No opportunity for those add-on sales. In South Africa, there is a company called Pargo, and there is many like it here, where they have associated with the groups of businesses to create collection points. So customers can choose exactly where it is that they want to go and collect the goods from, any time of day, maybe any time of night. But it's putting even more distance between the retailer and the customer.
Do you love shopping online, but the only thing you're getting is missed delivery notes? We understand. Your day isn't subject to the trading hours of the local post office, and collecting your parcel doesn't always work out. Introducing Pargo, a parcel point for deliveries and returns. Pargo gives you a variety of pickup points to choose from, and all that is left to choose is a point most convenient to you. Now you can combine something simple like shopping and picking up your parcel. It's so easy to use. Go to your favorite online shop, choose Pargo at the checkout page, and choose the pickup point you desire. On its way to you, you can track your parcel's movements through our secure track and trace system. We'll immediately notify you once the parcel has arrived via email or SMS, and have it ready for collection at an hour that is more suitable to your needs. Pargo, your parcel, your point, our promise.
All these things are great because they create certainty for the consumer. A lot more certainty than you'll see with the delivery model of, when's it going to arrive, does it arrive, does it get safe dropped, does it get stolen? The certainty that the product is there when I go to collect it. The challenge is, and a challenge very much for retailers is how much convenience and how much choice that you provide to that customer. Ultimately, the customer is going to demand certain levels of choice and convenience because the market is just going to push us there. But there's lots of questions as retailers I think we need to consider before we sort of plunge headlong in. And maybe it's bullets, not cannonballs. The convenience and choice is so entwined, and the more convenient and the more choice we offer, potentially the more complexity and the higher cost to serve. Convenience has become a sliding scale from the original premise of in-store collection to lockers to partner retailers. eBay is now delivering to Woolworths stores. Our logistics providers like Post are offering lockers, and the Pargo equivalent of Parcel Point is popping up everywhere in Australia. We have lots of choice, but depending on the type of retailer you are, maybe that choice becomes more challenging. If you're a small retailer and you don't have a national footprint, lockers might be the ideal solution. But if you have stores everywhere, if you're a national retailer that trades long hours, there's a real threat and a real cost to actually handing that over to somebody else. You're going to miss that opportunity for that add-on sale, which was the original tenet of click and collect. And there's also the smoke and mirrors of stock. What we choose to make available to the customer is really how much we want to constrain our business and how much we don't want to move stuff around. So, the most simple premise is the customer goes online, they select their preferred store, and suddenly the stock I see is the stock that hopefully is in that store. I don't need extra stock holdings. I don't need to move stock around. But if I want to give more and more choice to the customer, I need to tap into central stocks, maybe my store network, maybe our suppliers' stocks as well. All that comes at a cost, and depending on how much margin you've got to play with, depends on how easy it is to fulfill that promise. I think click and collect is inevitable in most businesses, but really your strategy should help you decide when, how, if you do it. The questions you've got to answer are the what to stock, the where to stock it, how much to stock, how much to handle it, how much to move it, whether I should charge, and I think finally and quite importantly, where you want the customer to collect it from to have that final experience. If you're famous for price, low price, you can't afford to handle it lots at this point in time. If you are highly fashionable and high price point. You can move that product around. You can pull it through your store network. And in fact, you probably don't want to invest in inventories everywhere, because otherwise you're probably going to have a bit of a clearance problem at some point. If you've got locations everywhere, you also probably want to leverage them before you hook up with Woolworths or another retailer to take your foot traffic. It should be a win-win, and I think depending on how you implement it, there are wins. The more convenient and the more choice, I think those wins maybe fall very much on the customer side. But that's a reality we may just have to live with. We can't ignore it. I think click and collect is definitely an option that we have to consider in our businesses. But it's still not for everyone. I would imagine most people in the room know Primark is a massive retailer. And in 2014, they decided that this wasn't for them. And their chief finance officer said, look at that £2 t-shirt. Everyone thinks it's clickety-click, but one third of clothes get returned. That means someone has to pick it up, someone has to deliver it, someone in the store has to take it back, refold it. It doesn't work at a low price point. They've made a conscious decision not to do online e-commerce, and they've made a conscious decision, therefore, not to have click and collect. But it's actually not holding them back as an organisation. They're poised to become the number 2 apparel retailer in the UK. They're just behind Marks and Spencer's and continuing to open stores. They're actually defying the trends, and they've got a strategy that's winning for them. So I think an important part of what I'd leave you with would be make sure that the strategy that you have is complementary to click and collect and to online. There are other retailers in Australia quite notable that don't play in this space. Aldi's not playing in this space. Bunnings doesn't play in this space. And finally, not everyone gets it right. A chap called Clifford Stoll, he's a bit of a mad scientist, a bit of an author, a bit of a teacher. At the same time that Steve Jobs was proclaiming his vision for the internet in 1995, in Newsweek, Clifford had a crack at it as well. And he didn't see a great future for it. He couldn't see a world where people got their newspaper from online. He couldn't see a world where Wikipedia was reliable and credible. And most certainly, he didn't see a world where cyber business had a place. He saw that it was disconnected from people and stores. He obviously got it a bit wrong. But I think as we stand here today gazing into the future, some people are going to get it right, some people are going to get it wrong. I don't think we can actually close the book and ignore the possibilities that sit in front of us, but make sure that they're right for the businesses that we have. With that, I'll hand over to Shanika.
I think that last point that Mark mentioned is really important. Having a view on that 10-year or 15-year horizon and working towards that is really important when we start to explore into the unknown that is online fulfillment. I'll start today by talking about a bit about the emergence of click and collect globally. The key point out of this is it starts off quite slow from an adoption perspective. So if we trace back to the first click and collect options being available starting around 2001 to 2004 in the UK and France, it took about 10 years for us to see any traction on those taking place. The key reason for this is click and collect, it's fundamental, is you're asking customers to do something differently. So customers have to see a compelling reason to do that. Often that comes with convenience, but to establish convenience, we need to ensure that the infrastructure and the supply chain is supported in a convenient manner. So we're investing in click and collect infrastructure in our store network, or more broadly than that, to ensure that goes forward. That can be a bit of a chicken and egg dilemma. When we think about retail executives, it could be very, very easy for one to say, let's wait until consumers buy into this concept before we start to invest. So we can say, in the Australian market, Coles and Woolies really putting in the hard yards for us to come on the back of that wave and invest in click and collect once consumers are accepting of that premise. In Australia today, there's about 42% of retailers who have an online offer that offer click and collect. That's relatively low compared to other markets. It's interesting as well from a customer perception perspective. It's probably that 5+ year mark in terms of how regularly we have engaged with click and collect. But it is interesting to note that when we look at other case studies, and for most retailers this is a story, that for every year that you have click and collect, the proportion of click and collect sales as a percentage of online sales tends to increase quite dramatically. So if we look at John Lewis in the UK, for example, year one for them was 16% of online sales was click and collect for those in year one, but then that skyrocketed into year four being 56% of online sales being via the click and collect channel. Now that's really powerful when you consider online's growing at the same time, and it is a good news story for new emergence into the space. So if we take Pet Barn, so Green Cross Limited, in their annual report, they cited, we went into click and collect in February 2017, our online sales grew by 55%, and click and collect made up over 40% of our online sales. So quite a good news story, and it's really on the back of consumers buying into the concept and having done so over the last 5 years. Plenty of upside for click and collect as well. If we take the fact that mobile users, because they're on the move, are more likely to utilize click and collect because they might be on the way home from work, say they're taking the train home and then they want to pick something up from the Woolies on the way. It's interesting to note that as that mobile shopping trend continues and grows, click and collect is likely to benefit. And also when we consider millennials are relatively more likely to use click and collect as well. As that market grows, click and collect, it seems like there's a good future ahead from that perspective. But to look into the future, let's start with where we are today, and hands up in the room for anyone who's received one of these in the mail. Okay, so there's probably about 98.5% of you. So today, the supply chain question that everyone's asking is, how can my day fit into a supply chain? So I received one of these in the mail, and all of a sudden I need to coordinate my day to go to the Australia Post to pick something up. Interestingly, I know Travis mentioned that the failed to deliver slips, about the high 20% mark. In 2015, Australia Post, you would have remembered the long queues outside the offices there. It was about 1 in 5 purchases, so 20% back then. Expectations between the retailers and consumers are improving, so that's about 10.7% as of last year. But what we're seeing is that will get you to a point, but it's an added cost and inconvenience in the supply chain. So where we want to go tomorrow is to really understand the consumer and their daily habits, and from a retailer's perspective, try to understand how can we tap into these. So just to give you a feel, there's 22,000 cafes across Australia, there's 6,700 petrol stations, there's 900 plus schools. So from a retailer's perspective, how can we start to tap into these as potential infrastructure points or stocking locations through partnership type models? Amazon have acquired Whole Foods, so there's a lot of M&A activity in the space as well when we're looking at networks more strategically. So the acquisition there you can see is quite unique in terms of Amazon's footprint compared to the Whole Foods footprint in light blue is quite complementary. Now this gives Amazon a lot more coverage for its online offer and to service some of those regions via a different network. So it is quite a competitive advantage from that perspective. Amazon's not alone in this space, so we've seen a lot more M&A activity in the space of trying to make an acquisition based on a store network. So Dave Lewis of Tesco led the acquisition of Booker. Booker's heavy into the convenience channel space in Europe. So out of that acquisition, Tesco potentially have 8,000 new locations to serve as collection points going forward. As is obviously at the moment mulling the acquisition of B&M to get better access to High Street, and then Sainsbury's acquisition of Argos gave them 200 new click and collect locations going forward. So it's really interesting to reflect on, online is going to be the death of the physical store back then, and then now it's really physical presence is a key to driving convenience in an online channel. So it's quite a full circle in a lot of ways. But what's happening is, I guess the question is, where does collection end and delivery start? So from the perspective of click and collect is really that closeness to store, but then if we start to move down that spectrum to closeness to customer, we're starting to see things and innovations and technologies that emerge, such as the car trunk deliveries, from Volvo. So this video that I'm going to show you, it was on the back of Amazon, DHL and Volvo partnering in 2015 to service Sweden with Christmas deliveries. On the back of that, Volvo have now partnered with a crowd shipping company, Urbit, to deliver goods to the trunk of vehicles.
Volvo Cars' approach to connectivity is designed around making life easier when you most need it. Technology should be there to serve you, not overload you. Volvo's approach to in-car delivery is taking a step into the future with a groundbreaking, just-in-time shopping experience developed with Urbit, a fast-growing Swedish startup. Just order your shopping from an approved online vendor and an Uber will deliver it direct to your car using Volvo's clever digital key solution in real time or when it suits you. Another safe, simple and convenient way to make life easier and get the most out of your connected Volvo car.
Uber is the Panasonic of Uber and Panasonic in that model. But also, if we sort of take that to the smart home concept and how that can have a practical application in the last mile. So those failed delivery slips that we mentioned, Amazon Key, which was introduced late last year, is a good example of this innovation.
Now be able to use Amazon Key, a new service that enables in-home delivery. With the Amazon Key app, you can also grant access to the people you trust. Let's say you need to remotely manage guest access to the front door of your home, maybe to let in your dog walker, a friend, or maybe to let in a team of home cleaning ninjas. To get started, order the Amazon Key in-home kit, which includes Amazon Cloud Cam and one of several compatible smart locks. Have it installed by a pro, or if you're handy, install it yourself. Once installed, it's no problem if you're not at home. With Amazon Key, you can get your packages delivered just inside your door. You can track your delivery with real-time notifications, watch the delivery happening live, or review a video of the delivery after it's complete.
So you can see there what are some of the barriers to that. So that trust and accountability layers are going to be something that we'll face, I'm sure. But as we've seen with Uber and those other peer-to-peer platforms, if consumers adopt and are willing to participate in this concept, regulation will have to follow from that perspective. It's interesting to try and understand and unpack where this will all go. So in terms of having a view and trying to work towards that, it's really important. So if we take, we've got our traditional supply chain, which is our distribution center, traditional transport methods back and forth to store and then to the customers. Overlay on top of that, a world where we have collection points, so that partner network infrastructure on top of that, and then to add to that a distribution pool, so a fragmented pool of drivers via the crowd shipping platforms, where we see the ultimate experience, so that anytime, any product, anywhere type of scenario happening is once these start to, these three dimensions start to work together and be able to integrate with each other. So imagine the only thing important with delivery is A to B. So in terms of what points we go via, and if that's a collection point, for example, and who delivers it from A to B to C, that is up for that crowd shipping platform to really tap into. All of the technology really exists today. It's just about connecting the dots from that perspective. And then in terms of the key enabler to a lot of this, it's that mobile interface. So a mobile is very unique in that it has one user and it's not like a PC with multiple users. So all of a sudden that's a trust and accountability interface. So from one lens, that is enabling trust on a fragmented driver pool or fragmented driver network through rating systems. But on another side of the equation, it's also from a consumer's perspective, enabling track and trace, real-time route optimization, and more flexibility and choice as you're going down this path. So it's exciting. In terms of online, online's growing, so now's the time to look at your click and collect strategy and how it aligns to your retail strategy. And as Mark mentioned, it's all to do with your customers, products, and the network footprint in terms of what you can look to leverage from that perspective. If it's a yes, in terms of now's the right time for us to get involved with click and collect, it's important to recognize that click and collect is a broader model than, or click and collect is morphing into something that's more broad in terms of collection points. So what that would look like in the future is important to acknowledge. Customers will choose click and collect for certainty, but as retailers, we need to be really important. We need to acknowledge that the levers that we have are choice and convenience. So if we introduce click and collect for all of our range across all of our store network, plus the partner store pickups, the recognition in terms of added complexity on our supply chain and movements within our supply chain has to be an eyes wide open decision versus a tighter range versus tighter network of stocking locations. Number 3, there's a good news story in terms of half the battle's already been won. So a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of customer acceptance and adoption has been paved the way for new entrants over the last 5 years. And then in terms of going forward, really understanding the convergence of delivery and collection models going forward and how that plays a role into our supply chains from a technology point of view is one to consider. On behalf of Mark and myself, we'd like to thank you for participating in this session. Last mile fulfillment's a really exciting topic, and for retailers and also people in supply chain, it's one that has a lot of influence in terms of improving productivity, customer experience, and also reducing waste in the supply chain. And on behalf of GRA, we're delighted to sponsor this event, given how close it is for both retail and supply chain. So thank you. It's a really interesting question because one of the big challenges with luxury and delivery or last mile is maintaining a brand. So you don't want, say for example, your Apple product to be delivered by a generic delivery person, or like DHL, Toll, or the parcel point, that's the convenience store across the street. So another thing is how do you maintain customer experience in the last mile? There's unique offerings in the States. There's a company called Enjoy, and what Enjoy offer is they sort of change the last mile concept into not just distribution, but it's a sales experience as well. So what we'll see a lot more of going forward is last mile isn't just delivery, it can also be an experience for the customer because that is the last touch point. So to your point on collection points, I'd see the same proliferation occurring on that front as well.